Welcome to the city. I'm Anthony Wilson, the Public Information Officer for the City of San Angelo. And joining us once again is our Water Utilities Director, Ricky Dixon. Ricky, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, when we last talked here just a few weeks ago, of course, our water supply was in dire straits, and then came the Memorial Day weekend and 7+ inches of rain. Tell us what that has meant for our surface water supply.
It has been a dramatic improvement. We were, yesterday's council meeting, I was prepared to go with drought level 3 before the rains, and now we're at 30 months if you don't count the Hickory water. If you count the Hickory, we're at 36 months, so it's over doubled of what we had. So it's been a blessing. It really has.
And I know you detailed this for the council, but talk very briefly about sort of how much water ended up in each of our 3 reservoirs.
Ivy, which is our main supply, they almost doubled. They were about 60,000 acre feet. Now they're at 113,000. We had less than 4,000 in Twin Buttes total in both pools, and now we're at 16,000 acre feet, a little over in the North Pool, and I think the South Pool, which is still running an equalization channel, is right at 9,000 acre feet. OC Fisher was completely dry. It's got 2,500 acre feet. Nazworthy was a little under or about at 5,000 acre feet when it started, and now it's basically full at a little over 9,000 acre feet. You know, I never expected Friday when I went home before Memorial Day that it'd be on top of Twin Buttes. I mean, on top of Nazworthy Dam releasing water. It's just truly amazing.
And Nazworthy, in fact, caught so much water. You had to release a lot of water downstream to Lake Ivy just to prevent flooding on the properties and the homes around the lake.
That's correct.
Just to put that in perspective, the city of San Angelo uses about 15,000 acre feet of water. And if I remember correctly from yesterday's city council meeting, you told the council that once you subtract the evaporation rates from what we now have in our surface water supply, we have about 38,000 acre feet of water available.
I think that was correct.
Yeah.
Right.
So you said when the Hickory is factored into the equation, we have about 36 months of available water supply. Talk a little bit about how you actually go about calculating what our water supply is.
Well, you take the content minus the evaporation, you know, and figure in the rainfall that we get on a normal year, demand, and just figure out how many months. It's a snapshot in time. I mean, I can't predict in 6 months what the water levels are going to be. I don't know how much evaporation, don't know how hot it's going to be, don't know if we're going to get any more rain. You know, there were 6 months there and early that we didn't have any rain. So, you know, it's hard to tell. That's just a snapshot in time, something to calculate.
And as a result of having 30 months of water supply, but before I ask the question I was about to ask, let me ask you this. Could you ever have imagined that we would have gone from essentially 12 months of water supply to 30 months of water supply, even after the rains? Did you expect that much runoff into our lakes?
It was really hard to tell. All the streams feeding our reservoirs were flowing at some quantity, some more than others. So it was really hard to get a grasp on for the first few days. Anytime you have that kind of water coming in, you know there's going to be a significant impact. It's just hard to tell what it's going to be.
So as a result of now having 30 months, in excess of 30 months of water supply, the city council yesterday, as we're taping this, did ease on the watering restrictions. Tell us what they did.
They remained in drought level 2, and earlier in the year they had changed drought level 2. Normally it's once every 7 days for watering, and they restricted that back to once every 14 days. They went back to the original once every 7 days for outside watering, but remained in drought level 2.
So with the city council having eased water restrictions, you know, one of the thoughts behind that is they really wanted to cement a conservation ethic within our community. Do you think our community has that mindset set now of wanting to conserve our water as much as possible?
I think so. If you look at the usage over the past couple of years, in 2011 was one of our recent, I guess, big usage years. It was the hottest year that we've had in history, but we had water, and I can't remember exactly, it's somewhere over 16,000 acre feet of water we used. And that's kind of when, you know, it got bad and drought levels, and we went into 3 a couple of times and come out and got a little rain. And I think the whole outlook and people's thoughts and actions have grown accustomed to, we got to be careful with our water, and we got to conserve where we can, and we appreciate that. We really do. And I think that's just kind of the way it is now. I think it is a culture change for the citizens.
On the other hand, the Water Utilities Department depends upon water sales in order to fund its operations and its maintenance and the improvement to your infrastructure. And so it's a bit of a balancing act to try to encourage conservation, yet sell enough water to do what you need to do in order to operate the Water Utilities Department at a certain level.
It is. It's a challenge, to say the least. Some adjustments are going to have to be made. I don't know exactly what those are yet. Council's got a tough decision ahead of them, and it's not going to be popular. You know, it's never going to be popular to beg and plead, as we have done in the past, to ask people to conserve where you can, and then tell them we're going to go up on your water rates. I mean, we have fixed costs to provide water, wastewater service, and I don't have those options of just cutting things off. I mean, we have to continue doing what we're doing.
And we've heard that concern too, that people feel like they're almost being punished for having conserved, because
I'm sure they do feel that.
So how do you respond to customers? And I'm sure that they call you with that concern too.
I don't have a good response for that. You know, it's a necessary evil, I guess. I mean, we have to, you know, they made comments about funding water out of something else. What else is there? I mean, the water fund has always been its own fund. I don't know what else to do.
In some regards, it's like running a business where your revenues have to exceed your expenditures at least by a little, and in your case more than a little, because you've got capital improvements to fund.
Correct. Yeah, it's not going to be a fun chore for this coming budget year.
So while we're out of the I guess the danger zone when it comes to our surface water supply, there's still a lot of challenges ahead for you.
Sure, and there will be from now on, I think.
On the other hand, in some regard, are these good problems to have? Are they better problems to have than worrying about where, you know, the next 1 million gallons of water is going to come from?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, at least we have some water in a little breathing room to work on some stuff. You know, if wastewater reuse comes online, we get Hickory online completely, it's going to be a whole new outlook on drought levels. It's no longer going to be, we're going to run out of water, or we have less than X amount of months of water remaining. We're going to have water. It just may not meet the demand. So I think at that point, when we get there, we're going to have to look at the whole conservation ordinance again.
You mentioned about water rates. Do you know how San Angelo's water rates compare to other cities, whether it's in West Texas or across the state?
We're looking into that right now. We've already got Abilene's in. I haven't had a chance to look at them in that much detail, but we're gonna go see what everybody else is doing.
You know, it's interesting if you think about the cost of water, which, you know, ranges depending upon what drought level we're in and how much you use, somewhere between $3 and maybe $5 on average per 1,000 gallons. And you think about how much you pay for 1 gallon of gas, or how much you pay for a case of water at the bottled water at the grocery store, and really and truly, water is a fairly expensive commodity.
They made kind of a little comment about that yesterday. Standard water rates are $2.31 a thousand. If you stay under that minimum deal, that's 0.2 of a cent per gallon. I would be happy with a penny a gallon.
With the Hickory Aquifer coming online, and then the expansion to be completed the following spring, will you need a new methodology in calculating how much water it is that we have available to us at any given time?
Well, let's just be another source that'll be fully online. It gets back to what I was talking about a while ago about, you know, it won't be that we will be out of water. We may just not have all that we want to use. So we're going to have to look at all that again.
And are we still on schedule to have the Hickory come online in November with the completion of the groundwater treatment facility?
That's correct. Still looking like the phase 2 project, which is the final piece of that, still sometime spring, early summer 2015. So everything is still right where we thought it would be, but before these rains, it wasn't going fast enough. So,
if you could deliver one message to your water customers about how they should approach their water usage in the coming months, if not years, what would that message be to them?
Everybody just needs to use water wisely. You know, if we all do that, I think we'll be okay.
We've been talking with Ricky Dixon, our Water Utilities Director, and we will return in just a moment with our Park Superintendent, Roger Hoblock, to talk about the watering of our parks. But first, we're going to spotlight another outstanding city employee.
My name is Ricky Bell. I'm a water treatment plant operator. I've worked for the city for 10 years. We bring water into the plant, we treat it, we ship it out. We've got computers set up in the office, and those computers we're able to run the entire city's water off of that. My role in that is, that's what I do, is I run the computer. We have to come out and make checks on our chemicals. We have, basically from the beginning, water comes into the plant, it gets hit with chemical. As it's traveling through the plant, it just takes a lot of time, detention time. What we do in here is a basic water analysis. It's going to give you pH, residual, if you're looking for chlorine, temperature, alkalinity. A lot of my job is also keeping checks on everything that's actually out in the system that we have here, or the treatment plant. There's a lot of math involved. There's a lot of, like I say, inside outside involved with it. There's a lot of thinking involved, mainly about, you know, what you're doing and how can you improve that. 8 to 8, 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening, and then 8 in the evening to 8 in the morning. As far as, and it goes all the way through the weekend and holidays and everything. So it's 24/7 for sure. They're 12-hour shifts, except for the last day. So it definitely wears on you. You're ready for the weekend by the time it rolls around. So making sure that if the city has water and it's good water, they can drink it, that's pretty much what I would call success of this job. The amount of multitasking that you have to do, there's a lot of things that could be going on at the same time, and you have to be ready for that. We get chemical deliveries all the time. We have stuff going wrong all the time. So there's a lot of things that you could be getting yanked around the plant pretty good, you know, in one day, just from 1 or 2 things going wrong or 1 or 2 things happening. It can be really stressful sometimes. I like to play guitar. I've got several of those. I don't really have, it doesn't feel sometimes like I have a lot of spare time, but I like to mow grass at home, do chores at the house, just to keep myself active. Barbecue pit, some friends and family over, so just enjoy it. A good day at work is everything going smooth, because whatever's going to happen for the day, I mean, it's all here. It's waiting for you when you get here, but a good day is everything going smooth, no real problems within the plant here. That's a good day here.
Welcome back to the city. We are now joined by our Park Superintendent, Roger Hoblock. Roger, thanks for being with us.
It's glad to be here, Anthony.
You know, I like to say that few people know more about anything than Roger Hoblock knows about grass. So if you would, to sort of set up this interview, share with our audience some of your educational and professional background.
Well, Anthony, it started back in 1990. I got my range science degree from Texas A&M. I was actually a ranch manager for about 5 years. At that point, I moved and became a county extension agent for agriculture for about 6 or 7 years. And then I moved to College Station, got my master's degree in agronomy turfgrass science in 2004, and became the extension program specialist for turf and water management for a few years in the San Antonio region. At that point, I moved here, became the park superintendent. I've done that for the last 7 years, and I also teach a turf class. It's a graduate level class at Angelo State.
So you're here now to talk with us about the watering of our parks. Of course, the Parks Department is the city's biggest water user. Explain why that is.
Well, one of the things I think everybody needs to understand, Anthony, is, when we're dealing with parks, we're dealing with acreage and not square feet. Most homeowners have a landscape that they water probably on average about 5,000 to maybe 7,000 square feet. If I give you an example of Producers Park, which was recently built within the last couple of years, that's 12 acres of landscape that I have to irrigate. So it's almost the same if you think of it. It takes about 8 home landscapes to equal 1 acre at that square footage that we talked about. So I almost have 100 home sites, so to speak, at one park. And so, yes, it does take a lot of water, but the one thing to keep in mind is we're still under the same ordinance provisions as everyone else. We still can only water once a week when we have to, or are only able to water once a week. We can only put out 1 inch each time for each week that we water, those types of things. So yes, we use a lot of water, unfortunately, when we do have to water, but it's because of the size, not necessarily the fact that we're overwatering.
I think there's a common misperception that the city and the Parks Department does not pay for the water that it uses. How much do you spend on water each year?
Well, again, it varies. It varies on rainfall, and it varies on the number of parks that we're actually watering. My budget as of today per year is roughly $208,000. That doesn't take it very far. If you look at our requirements from the standpoint of turf, trees, landscape requirements, we probably need about, on average, 38 inches of water, supplemental irrigation per year to maintain a healthy landscape. And that number is derived basically from looking at the water requirements and the loss rates. On average, per week here in San Angelo, through transpiration from the plants and evaporation from the soil, we lose approximately 2 to 2.5 inches per week. So when you look at our ordinance where it says we can only water 1 inch per week, we're already behind the 8 ball going into it, especially during the hot summer months. And so again, depending on rainfall, if you look at it from our budgetary standpoint, we're looking at it from, okay, I would like to have at least 38 inches to work with. Not to say that I'm going to put that amount out, but that would be a good figure to give me the opportunity to sustain a healthy landscape, again, depending on the site that we have.
And does the Parks Department get any special discount on its water rates?
No, we pay $4. Well, let's start out. Before 2011, I was paying $2.81 per 1,000 gallons of water. Currently, with the rate increases back in 2011, I'm at $4.20 per 1,000 gallons, which is roughly 1.5 times what I was paying before. I didn't get any type of increase in budget or anything. So when that occurred, I was only able to water even less parks than what we were before, just because of the budget constraints that we have. But no, we don't get any type of discount. We pay. I have a budget that I have to work within.
And of course, you've done a very good job of educating me, but not all of our parks actually have operational irrigation systems. How many do have operational irrigation systems versus the total number of parks that we do have?
Well, let me start out by saying in the Parks Department, we maintain roughly 555 acres of land. Within that, there's about 292 acres, or roughly 300 acres, of irrigation sites that have irrigation systems that are viable. Okay, some of them need more repairs than others, but we have about 292. When we were in the drought levels and things like that over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, we were probably only watering maybe 30 to 50%, depending on the situation we were in, of those 292, which is roughly maybe 100 to 140 acres, which includes the Texas Bank Sports Complex, which is about 55 acres of that.
So how do you determine which parks to water when you do water parks?
A lot of it has to do with the use. The most highly utilized sites will be the ones that get prioritized. The ones that we have our greatest investment in, the newly renovated sites, the newly constructed sites, those types will come first. If over a period of time we feel like we can water other sites, then we try to do so. And I think the folks need to understand that many of our sites do not have any type of irrigation system, including drip.
And with the sites that you do water, how do you determine when it is that you're going to water?
That's a good question. Most of the time, especially during when we're in situations where we don't have a great water supply, we actually physically go out and monitor those sites. And we'll stick a probe into the soil and see what our soil moisture is before we ever turn on or even think about turning on any type of irrigation system. And I would encourage that to the general public. Working off a clock a lot of times is not a way to conserve water. You need to actually go out and test and see whether or not you still have moisture left, because there's no sense in adding more water if you're still in decent shape. And a lot of times you can see it in the turf and even sometimes in the shrubs and trees when you need to add water. If you'll watch it, you'll know when you start getting hot spots or it starts turning a little bit of gray color on you. Then you might want to think about watering.
In light of the abundant rainfall that we got over the Memorial Day weekend, what are your plans for watering parks now?
Well, again, we're going to monitor each site just as we have before. We do hope to get a fertilization in hopefully within the next 2 weeks. Typically, we normally have that done in late April and May, but with the drought levels that we were in and the fact that we were watering very few, if any, of our park systems, they weren't prepared to receive the fertilization. They were in a stress condition, and we couldn't water it in. And that's what you have to do with the fertilizer. So hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we'll try to get that done. At that point, we will need to water that fertilizer into the parks that we choose to make that application. But again, we'll be monitoring those sites. You need to understand too, last week we actually went out and dug in several areas in our parks to see how far that waterfront moved within that soil profile. And you'd be surprised on all the differences that you would see. In some areas we were down 40 inches and we still had moisture. In some areas after 12 inches it was bone dry. And so again, each site is different, and that's why we have to go out and make those assessments before we make the decision on whether or not we're going to pull the trigger on starting irrigation or not.
When we are watering, especially at some of our larger facilities, people might see sprinkler heads at that location operational on a daily basis and think that we're watering the same spots every day.
Correct.
Explain what's actually happening there. And I'm talking about a place, for instance, like the sports complex.
Right. That's another great question. With the example of the sports complex, we have over 90 zones, irrigation zones on that site. There's no way that I can apply an inch of water over that site over one night. It sometimes takes up to the whole week, depending on gameplay and things like that that's going on that site. And so, yes, you will see that, but the thing you need to consider is we're not watering the same zone every day. We may water the same zone within the same day, and that's again something we want to encourage the public to think about too, is as you're watering, different soils react to water differently. Some will accept that water. You could put the whole inch down in one watering and be done. But some, you need to place maybe half of that or 3/4 of that. And what you're trying to do is avoid runoff, excessive runoff especially, because most of our soils here have a pretty high clay content. In some cases they get compacted, things of that nature. If you try to put that entire inch down at one time, the vast majority of it was going to run off. So you need to put some down, wait. We usually cycle through what we're going to water that night and we come back and redo the same thing. But again, we have to limit ourselves to that 1 inch that everyone else has to adhere to as well.
Occasionally a citizen will see a sprinkler head on a city facility or in a park that is operational when it shouldn't be, maybe during prohibited watering hours. If they see something like that, what should they do?
Well, number one, give us a call. Our number is 659-8563. I thank everyone that calls in to report that, because in many cases, what we have noticed over the past years is that a diaphragm within that valve will become malfunctional. And it will allow water to flow through it. And when that water flows through, it may seep or it may actually run that entire zone, depending on how bad the problem is with that diaphragm within that valve. And so when that happens, we have no control over that at this point to be able to stop it. And so as soon as someone sees that, we always appreciate the phone calls. We just don't have enough staff members to go out and have them at the site when those sites are watering, because again, a lot of times we're watering in the nighttime too. And so we watch for those as well. We do monthly system checks on all our systems, especially during periods of time when we are irrigating. And so we try to make the necessary repairs. We also audit our system to try to figure out what types of rates that are being applied. That's the other thing that people need to understand is the heads that we use, most of them it takes up to 2 hours and sometimes 2.5 hours to get that 1 inch of water. There are other heads out there that don't. They may take only a half hour to an hour. And that's why we perform irrigation audits, which are basically placing cups out there and capturing that water over a period of time. And then it'll give us the application rate, how many inches per hour, or how long it takes for our system, or how long does it need to run to get to that 1 inch. It also allows us to come back afterwards and probe that soil and see what that 1 inch does for us. In some cases, it may go down 12, 18 inches. In some cases, it may only go down 4 to 6. And so it gives us a better idea of how we need to manage our water when we're going to water.
Last question here. On June 3rd, you updated the council on what your budget situation was with water and watering parks, so that they could begin thinking of how they want to approach that and prioritize that and what some viable options may be. One of the ideas that was raised was the possibility of decommissioning some of our parks so that you could focus your effort on those high-profile parks that are most used. What do you think about that idea?
Well, that's certainly an option to consider. We actually have done that probably over 3 to 4 years ago. We had several parks that we decommissioned. The problem with that is that those sites that are identified that we decommission are normally sites that we already do not spend a whole lot of money on. Those funds are already at the high priority sites. And so it doesn't give me a lot of dollar savings to decommission it. Not only that, but we have to continue to maintain it until it's sold, and we still haven't sold any of the other sites. And so it doesn't save me in time either, because I have to stay within code compliance on those sites. And so it is an option, but again, there's not a lot of savings that we see unless you're going to take a great number of them, and I don't think the general public or council would want to go that route.
We've been talking with our park superintendent, Roger Hoblock, and we hope you'll join us for the next episode of The City.